Walk into Liam's house, and you instantly feel a sense of calm. It's nothing extravagant. A simple 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood, nothing that's going to make your jaw drop. The kitchen counters are the exact same ones he had back in 2019. His ride is a €4 Toyota Camry that he bought with $31,000 upfront cash, and he fully intends to drive it until the wheels literally fall off. He'll clocks about 44 hours a week at his job, takes 3 genuine vacations every year, and when the market took a massive 28% dive back in 2022, he didn't panic. He just went out for a run, came back, and didn't even bother checking his portfolio for 2 straight weeks. Liam is 46 years old. His net worth is $1.84 million. Now, let's take a 3-mile drive over to Harry's house. Harry leases a $72,000 BMW that he had to renegotiate last year just to make the monthly payments look somewhat practical. His kitchen got a massive $47,000 facelift in 2021. He's got a brokerage account loaded up with 6 volatile stocks he swears by. He's locked into an $850,000 home that he can't afford to sell because doing so would mean throwing away his sweet 3.1% mortgage rate. From the outside, Harry's financial life looks like the ultimate success story. From the inside, it feels like a house of cards. The second the market twitches, Harry is sweating, instantly opening his app to check the damage. He grinds 58 hours a week and actually outturns Liam most years. Harry is also 46. His net worth? Just $312,000. Same city. Same exact starting income. Same decade. One of them actually built real wealth, while the other simply funded the illusion of it. But look, this isn't another generic video telling you how to save your first dollar or start investing. This is about the hidden landmines waiting for you after you've actually started making some real money. These are the traps that are completely invisible when you're broke, but become brutally expensive the very moment you find success. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time reverting why people who have every tool to be financially free end up financially trapped. If that's a cycle you want to break, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because we are breaking down every single one of these traps today. Trap number 1. Lifestyle creep. Why it accelerates. The more you make, let's kick things off with the trap that is almost certainly happening to you right now, even if you haven't fully noticed it yet. Goldman Sachs surveyed over 5,000 Americans for their 2025 retirement report. Very deep inside that massive mountain of data is one specific statistic that completely blew my mind. Among households pulling in between $250,000 and $500,000 a year, roughly 43% of them reported living paycheck to paycheck. And for those making over $500,000 a year, it's still nearly 40%. Think about that. Almost half of the people making $500,000 annually have virtually nothing left over at the end of the month. But here is where it gets genuinely bizarre. This financial suffocation actually gets worse the higher up the ladder you go. Households earning between $200,000 and $300,000 only reported a 16% paycheck-to-paycheck rate. This proves that as your income climbs, something else doesn't just grow, it accelerates. And that something is your standard of living, quietly swallowing up every single raise and bonus before the money even hits your checking account. Call this the Diderot effect. Named after an 18th century French philosopher who was gifted a stunning high-end scarlet dressing gown. The gown was beautiful. But suddenly, his old wooden desk looked incredibly shabby next to it. So, he replaced the desk. But then his chair looked completely out of place next to the new desk. Then came a new rug, a new art. Before he knew it, he was drowning in debt, all triggered by a single luxury gift. He famously called the gown a dangerous companion. Economists label this a consumption cascade. But your brain just calls it, hey, I work hard, I deserve this. And that script keeps running on repeat until the money completely runs out. You upgrade the apartment, and suddenly, the old furniture looks embarrassing. You fix the furniture, and now your car feels out of place. You upgrade the car, and suddenly the neighborhood doesn't match your status. Each individual purchase feels totally justified in the moment. But collectively, they bleed your net worth dry, year after year. All while making you feel like you aren't even overspending. The fix is incredibly uncomfortable, but it is dead simple. The moment your income takes a step up, your savings rate has to take a step up first, before your lifestyle can even catch a whiff of that new cash. If you land a $15,000 raise, Route $8,000 directly into your investments before you allow yourself to feel a single dollar of it. Applying that one rule consistently across a career is easily worth an extra $400,000. If you don't, well, the data shows you will easily find a way to blow through $500,000 a year and still wonder why you feel broke. Trap number 2, overconcentration. Falling in love with a single asset. This next trap specifically targets people who have actually tasted success, which makes it infinitely more dangerous. Tell me if this pattern sounds familiar. You made a smart move. You bought a stock, acquired a piece of real estate, or accumulated equity in the company you work for, and it went up significantly. You mentioned it to a friend at a dinner party, maybe casually, maybe a little less casually, and suddenly, you developed an emotional relationship with this asset. It became a core pillar of your financial identity. Selling it now feels like a betrayal, or an admission that you don't truly believe in it anymore. So, you hold, and you keep holding, while that single position grows to represent a massive, terrifying percentage of your entire net worth. Technically speaking, you are no longer investing. You are gambling. You just don't realize it because up until this point, you've been winning. Back in the year 2000, Intel was one of the most celebrated, rock-solid technology powerhouses on the planet. This wasn't some speculative, hype-driven .com startup. It was a dominant, highly profitable giant. With massive real-world earnings, at the absolute peak of the tech boom, it hit roughly $75 a share. Within just 14 days of hitting that peak, the stock plummeted 20%. Within 22 days, it was down 36%. After a minor revenue warning that September, it collapsed 40% in a single trading session. By late 2002, it was scraping the bottom at $12 a share. That is a staggering 82% wipeout. And here is the kicker that still shocks me. 26 years later, Intel still hasn't recovered to its year 2000 peak. Anyone who went all-in on Intel at the top didn't just underperform the market. They've been sitting in a financial waiting room for over a quarter of a century just to break even. But Intel isn't a rare anomaly. It's just the one with a famous logo. J.P. Morgan conducted an exhaustive analysis of every single stock in the Russell 3000 index from 1980 to 24 in tracking roughly 13,000 companies. They discovered that a shocking 40% of all companies suffered a permanent catastrophic decline of 70% or more from their peak, never to recover. In the tech sector specifically, nearly 2/3 of companies faced catastrophic failure. The overall stock market index only looks great because a tiny handful of massive historic winners end up carrying the dead weight of everyone else on their backs. The problem is, you don't get to know which bucket your favorite stock belongs to until it's already too late. That's why nearly every veteran portfolio manager on earth agrees on one unshakable boundary. Never let a single position account for more than 10% of your total portfolio. In fact, most conservative wealth managers argue that 5% is a much safer ceiling. The emotional attachment is the real trap here, not the asset itself. Trap number 3. Tax inefficiency. The invisible drain. This is the silent killer. Nobody notices it until it's far too late. Imagine you've had an incredible year. Your portfolio is up, and you finally cashed out of a stock position that completely doubled. You're on top of the world. Then tax season rolls around. You open up your tax filing software, and you are staring at a liability number that literally makes no sense. You cleared a beautiful $60,000 profit on that trade, but you now owe the government $24,480. Not because you did anything illegal, and not because you're being audited. You owe that money simply because you got impatient and sold the asset in month 11 instead of waiting until month 13. You threw away nearly $10,000 in completely unnecessary taxes on a single $50,000 gain just because you couldn't sit on your hands for 2 more months. This is what tax inefficiency looks like. It's not fraud. It's just a series of timing blunders and account placement errors that nobody ever takes the time to explain to you. Morningstar tracked the average equity mutual fund and found that it surrenders roughly 1.48% of its returns every single year to taxes, compounded over a 20-year period. That scales out to a 35% reduction in your total end in wealth. On a modest $500,000 portfolio, you are looking at $175,000 completely vaporized. Not due to market crashes, and not due to bad investments, but solely due to lazy tax management. The 3 most common blunders are incredibly easy to fix. Holding high-yield dividend stocks, or REITs, in a standard taxable brokerage account instead of a tax-advantaged account like an IRA. every single dividend payment becomes an immediate taxable event, whether you want it to cash out or not. Failing to practice tax loss. When a specific position is down, selling it allows you to lock in a capital loss that you can use to directly offset your capital gains elsewhere, wiping out your tax bill without changing your overall market exposure. Selling assets before holding them for a full calendar year. Short-term capital gains can be taxed at brutal rates, up to 43.4%, whereas long-term capital gains max out at 23.8%. That massive 20 percentage point spread is a voluntary penalty fee you pay for being impatient. Taxes are almost certainly your single largest annual line item expense, bigger than your mortgage, bigger than anything else on your bank statement. The truly wealthy don't necessarily earn more. Just ensure that the system takes as little of it as legally possible. Trap number 4. Overconfidence. After early success, this trap is uniquely engineered to destroy highly intelligent, ambitious people who have done everything right, which is exactly why it is so wildly effective. Imagine you've had 2 phenomenal years in a row. The individual stocks you handpicked went straight up. A real estate deal you put together worked out beautifully. Your side business grew at a pace that shattered your original models. Your brain, wired for survival, naturally files this data away under a very specific folder. I am a genius at this. Psychologists call this self-attribution bias. It's a cognitive glitch where we credit our wins entirely to our personal skill, while writing off our losses as temporary bad luck. It's not a character flaw. It's literally how human psychology is hardwired. But in the ruthless arena of investing, that specific wiring is catastrophically expensive. I have watched this exact tragedy play out in real time. A brilliant professional enjoys one spectacular year in a raging bull market, and suddenly, they start concentrating their positions. They transition into higher-risk options trading. They start buying on margin. They abandon a boring, diversified portfolio to go Ellen on 5 hyper-speculative tech names they believe in. The incredibly effective index fund that was quietly compounding their wealth in the background gets butchered into a high-stakes trading account that demands daily emotional bandwidth and delivers monthly heartburn, and for a while, it actually keeps working. Why? Because a rising tide floats all boats. When the entire ocean is rising, every amateur boater feels like an expert navigator. But the hard academic data on this is absolutely brutal. Researchers at the University of São Paulo tracked nearly 20,000 individuals who picked up day trading. Among those who actually persisted at it for more than 300 days, a staggering 97% lost absolutely everything. Not a simple majority, 97%. Out of that massive pool of 20,000 people, only 17 individuals managed to earn more than the local minimum wage through trading. The researchers found zero evidence of a learning curve. In fact, the longer people persisted, the worse their financial performance became. The market possesses a highly cynical sense of humor. A bull market is not feedback. If the entire market climbs 25% and your portfolio climbs 25%, that tells you absolutely nothing about your skill. The only real test of your strategy is what happens when the music stops and conditions violently shift. And by the time those conditions do shift, overconfidence has usually pushed you so far out on the risk curve that you are exposed to a drop you cannot possibly afford to take. The ultimate counterintuitive shield against this trap is pure, unadulterated boredom. The most mathematically effective strategy for 99% of human beings is aggressively, painfully boring. Broad market index funds, automated recurring contributions, and absolute minimal intervention. The exact moment investing starts feeling thrilling or exciting, that shouldn't be treated as an invitation, it should be treated as a massive warning siren. Trap. #5. The trapped grind, working far past the expiration date, nobody ever frames. Hard work is a financial trap, but at a certain level of wealth, it absolutely becomes one. There is a distinct tipping point in wealth accumulation where the value of your accumulated capital completely eclipses the value of your marginal day-to-day labor. Yet, the vast majority of ambitious people blow right past this exit ramp without ever slowing down. Why? Because intense, grueling work is the exact behavior that got them rich in the first place. And turning down the dial feels instinctively like losing. But let's look at the cold math. If you have $5 million invested at a highly conservative, defensive 5% annual return, that portfolio generates $250,000 a year, completely passively. That breaks down to $684 every single day. It pays you on weekdays. It pays you on weekends. On national holidays, and on the days you are stuck in bed sick, once you cross that threshold, every single additional hour of stress and labor you take on has to justify itself against the rapidly diminishing utility of piling more money on top of a guaranteed $684 a day. Past a certain coordinate on the wealth map, you are no longer working for financial survival. You are working purely out of a subconscious habit. Bronnie Ware spent 8 years working as a palliative care nurse in Australia, spending invaluable time sitting with patients during the final 12 weeks of their lives. She meticulously documented the 5 most common regrets expressed by the dying. The number 2 most common regret, voiced by virtually every single male patient she cared for, was simple. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. They didn't wish they had pulled in a larger bonus. They didn't wish they had built a bigger company. They wished they hadn't sacrificed their limited time on Earth to the grindstone. The question you need to sit with is deeply profound. What is your time actually worth to you today compared to when you started? Because if that number hasn't fundamentally changed how you allocate your limited hours, you are leaving your most irreplaceable asset on the table. Trap number 6. The paper-rich millionaire. This is a modern financial trap that has exploded in scale, minting a brand new wave of victims every single year. Bloomberg ran an analysis of Federal Reserve and Census Bureau data and found that households sitting on a net worth between $1 million and $2 million had a staggering 66% of their entire wealth locked up completely in illiquid assets, primarily home equity and restrictive retirement accounts. Think about that. 2/3 of everything they own on paper cannot be accessed without undergoing a grueling 6-month real estate transaction, triggering a massive IRS penalty, or waiting until they turn 59 and a half. The illiquid millionaire lives a very specific, deeply uncomfortable existence. You are technically wealthy, but practically broke. You cannot move quickly to seize an incredible investment opportunity because your capital is entirely locked inside a house with a low interest rate you'd be insane to walk away from. Trapped in a retirement account, you'll pay a 10% premium. Too touch early, or committed to a private equity deal with a rigid 5-year lockup period. You are rich in theory, but entirely constrained in practice. The baseline safety rule here is completely not negotiable. Maintain 3 to 6 months of core living expenses in actual liquid cash. Not invested in a volatile market, not locked in a CD, but immediately accessible. Beyond that, you need to ruthlessly track the exact percentage of your net worth that you can realistically access within 30 days without triggering severe tax consequences. If that liquidity number drops below 15% to 20%, your portfolio desperately needs a liquidity audit before it needs anything else. Being structurally rich but practically cash-starved isn't a success story, it's just a gilded cage. Trap number 7. Neglecting liability. Becoming a premium target. This topic isn't exciting. It isn't sexy, and it doesn't make for trendy content, which is exactly why it inflicts the absolute most catastrophic damage. As your net worth grows, you unknowingly become a highly lucrative target for litigation. This isn't paranoia. It's basic courtroom math. A comprehensive survey by Ace Private Risk Services revealed that 21% of high net worth households carry absolutely zero umbrella liability insurance. Meanwhile, 13% of personal injury courtroom awards now completely exceed $1 million, and massive jury verdicts are becoming more frequent, not less. One sudden car accident, a single guest who slips and falls at a backyard party, or an unexpected situation where you find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time. A court judgment can easily blow straight past your standard auto and homeowners insurance limits, drilling directly into your core investment portfolio. An umbrella liability policy is a master security layer that sits on top of your existing policies, adding $1 million or more in pure liability coverage. The annual cost, typically a meager $300 to $600. Bumping that up to $5 million in total umbrella coverage might run you $800 to $1,200 a year. It is a rounding error on a meaningful portfolio, but it is the single thin line standing between a very bad day and total financial ruin. As your assets scale, your protective shield must scale with them. Umbrella liability, updated homeowner replacement costs, and maximized auto limits. They get skipped because they are boring, but you don't want to learn this lesson in a courtroom. Trap number 8. False diversification. Same beast, different labels. Imagine you own 6 different exchange-traded funds, ETFs. You feel incredibly secure? But if you peer under the hood, you realize that 4 of them are simply U.S. large-cap equity funds with slightly different branding. Holding nearly identical allocations of the exact same tech stocks. Holding nearly identical allocations of the exact same tech stocks. You have a taxable brokerage account, a 401k, and a Roth IRA. But every single one of them is just invested in minor variations of the exact same index. You feel diversified. You are not diversified. You are concentrated with extra steps. The deeper architectural flaw here is what economists call correlation. In the absolute chaos of the 2008 financial crash, the historical correlations between entirely different equity asset classes spiked from a standard 40% to nearly 70%. When panic hits the system, everything drops together. Splitting your money between small-cap U.S. funds and large-cap U.S. funds won't save you when systemic fear takes over. Real diversification means owning assets that react to entirely different economic triggers. Look at David Swensen, the legendary investor who managed Yale University's institutional endowment for 36 years. He generated a historic 13.7% annual return, exploding the university's portfolio from $1.3 billion to an astronomical $42 billion. How? By systematically rerouting 60% of the capital into genuine alternatives. Private equity, real assets, and venture capital. His foundational insight was revolutionary. True diversification isn't about the number of ticker symbols you own. It's about the lack of correlation between them. You don't need to perfectly mirror a multi-billion-dollar university fund, but you must ensure you have true international exposure and independent assets that move completely outside the orbit of the standard. Stock Market. Part 6. The Ultimate Test and the Final Score Trap. Number 9. Panic selling at high numbers. This is a psychological trap that scales exponentially the wealthier you get. Yet almost no one talks about the raw mechanics of it. Back when your portfolio was worth $40,000, and the market took a sharp 20% hit, you lost $8,000 on paper. It stung, but it was abstract enough that you could easily breathe through the stress. Fast forward to when your portfolio hits $2 million. Now, that exact same 20% market correction inflicts a brutal $400,000 paper loss. Your brain, which evolved over millennia in primitive environments where losing that much of any resource meant certain death, has absolutely no evolutionary framework for processing a $400,000 loss calmly. Your natural aversion to loss doesn't scale rationally with your portfolio's long-term ability to bounce back. It scales with the raw, terrifying dollar amount. This means the wealthier you become, the more violent the psychological pull to do something when the market starts to bleed. The Dalbar Report Tracking Investor Behavior highlights this devastating reality. Over a 20-year window, while the S&P 500 delivered a brilliant 26.3% return, the average individual equity investor scratched out just 16.5%. Compounding that massive behavioral gap over time means an automated buy-and-hold investor turned a $100,000 seed into over $750,000. While the average active investor walked away with less than half of that amount, nearly $372,000 completely thrown away. Not to market crashes, not to fees, but to human behavior, buying when things felt euphoric and selling the moment things felt terrifying. During the panic of the COVID crash in March 2020, terrified investors yanked a record-breaking $326 billion out of mutual funds in a single month. The market hit its absolute bottom on March 23rd. Over the next 12 months, it staged an incredible 70% rally. Every single dollar that fled the market at the bottom completely missed the historic recovery. Purely because the raw dollar amounts had grown large enough to completely hijack rational thought. The only shield against this isn't willpower, it's automated structure. Automate your contributions so there is no emotional decision to make during a market crash. Write your investment thesis down in ink before the market drops, so you have an unshakable anchor when clarity of action. Set the strategy before the fear arrives. Because once the panic sets in, you are running ancient software in a modern financial system, and the ancient software always loses. Trap number 10. The ultimate deferral, neglecting the estate plan, is the final landmine, and it's the one people push off the longest. Because fixing it requires staring directly at a reality none of us want to visualize. But that hesitation costs families absolute fortunes. The iconic artist Prince tragically passed away in April 2016 with a massive estate valued at roughly $156 million. He had no will, no trust, and no estate plan of any kind established. What followed was an absolute nightmare. 6 agonizing years of brutal public litigation. 2,711 messy court filings. A staggering $45 million in pure legal fees, $60 million in federal estate taxes, and another $24 million carved out for state taxes. When the dust finally settled, roughly $87 million, over 56% of everything he spent his entire life, built, completely consumed by an administrative disaster that a standard ironclad estate plan would have effortlessly prevented. 2 of his siblings literally passed away while the estate was still stuck in the probate courts. A simple $100,000 estate plan would have saved $87 million. Yet, data shows that only 26% of Americans have a valid will. Even among those who have managed to build significant wealth, a complete failure to plan remains the overwhelming norm. Establishing a basic revocable living trust bypasses the nightmare of probate entirely. Ensuring your life's work actually goes to the people you love. The takeaway: building wealth is one specific skill set. Structuring that wealth so it actually survives is an entirely different game. Look back at Liam and Harry one last time. Harry isn't a cautionary tale because he failed. He didn't fail. He worked incredibly hard, earned fantastic money, and made 100 right moves. He just didn't realize that the landmines completely changed on him. Right around the time his net worth crossed into 6 figures, the risks became more sophisticated, more invisible, and infinitely more expensive. Liam didn't reach $1.84 million because he was inherently luckier or smarter than Harry. He reached it because he understood, perhaps intuitively, that the true enemies of growing wealth aren't the loud, obvious ones. It's not the sudden job loss or the sudden market crash. It's the slow, quiet lifestyle creep. It's the emotional decisions triggered by massive dollar amounts. It's the complete inaction on the boring, unsexy paperwork that never feels urgent until it becomes a catastrophe. Somewhere on this list today, a specific trap jumped out at you. Maybe it was a sudden realization of your own lifestyle creep. Maybe it's that concentrated stock position you are way too emotionally attached to. Or maybe it's the trust or will you've been promising yourself you'd update for the last 3 years. That raw recognition is worth more than every single word in this video. Don't go watch another 10 videos to procrastinate. Go fix that one thing. Just one. Fix it today, and if this video helped you see a blind spot you hadn't noticed before, hit that subscribe button, because this is exactly what we do here.